Hey there, friend. Welcome to the Having a Mom Moment podcast. I am your host, Shannon Warner. This podcast is all about taking a few moments for yourself and reconnecting to the amazing woman behind the title of mom. You have so many plates spinning at any given time between your kids, your partner, your job, maintaining a household, etc., etc. But where does taking time just for you play into that? Let's spend some time together, you and me, right now. We're rebranding a mom moment to those sacred moments you take to fill your cup first. Let's connect, tune in, and tap into what makes us the incredible women that we are. We'll nurture ourselves first so we can be our best selves for those we pour into on a daily basis. We'll also bask in the beautiful wisdom of other moms to learn about the ways in which they've tapped into alignment in their own motherhood journeys. Come on, mama, it's your time. We're having a mom moment. Hello, my friends. Welcome to this week's episode of the Having a Mom Moment podcast. I am your host, Shannon Warner, and I am so honored that you are using your precious time to join us here today. I have a cold, so please excuse this voice, but we're just going to power through the best that we can because, the to-do list don't stop just because our voices may be trying to. Don't worry, I am doing the best I can to honor my need for rest during this time, but I love this podcast and I love showing up here for you all every week. So here we are. My offer still stands if you're interested in joining me for a coffee chat. The link will be in the show notes. No obligation whatsoever. I'm just here to be a sounding board, an unbiased third party for whatever you're working through right now. If you feel like you're stuck in Groundhog Day and you're just not loving all the pieces of your life right now as a mom, or if you just know that you've got a bigger dream and you're not sure what to do or where to go from here, I'm here for that. The link is there if you want to chat. I'm open to meeting you. I'm excited at the opportunity to continue to meet some women of the audience that I don't already know. So please, if the opportunity is speaking to your heart, grab a time and we can connect. So on this episode, I really want to focus on those of us who identify or may have formally identified as high achievers. We're the kids who were honor roll, National Honor Society, Dean's List in college, took our academics seriously and had our goals, and we've got a degree or two under our belts. And why a lot of us struggle in motherhood. Now, of course, this is my perspective and a reflection of my experience, but it has taken me many years into my own motherhood journey to understand why there is so much struggle for those of us who may identify as high achievers. So, what does it mean to be a high achieving mom? The way I would have defined this several years ago and the way I define it now are actually totally different. Originally, I would have described this as someone who is killing it at work while successfully juggling the responsibilities of being a mom. It was a woman who was rising through the ranks of her organization and increasing her salary along the way, nabbing those shiny titles. That view is not limited to a corporate type of environment either. It could be a woman who is showing up in her field and just doing all the things and raising her hand for opportunities to grow and really shining in her organization. These women are often doing so by emulating the very masculine structures and behaviors of the workplace and perhaps completely pushing down that feminine and maternal part of themselves in order to do so. Now, today, I would personally reframe a high-achieving mom as someone who leverages the strengths of their motherhood experience to show up at work in a way that feels most aligned for them at that point in their life, while honoring their own needs and taking care of themselves along the way. So for example, when you have a newborn or a young infant, you will very likely be sleep deprived. You may be squeezing in pump breaks at work. Your mind may be elsewhere, worried about your baby at daycare, and some days all you have to give is 50%, but you give that full 50% that you've shown up with. That's showing up with 100% that you have, and that is enough for some days. Other days, you have more to give and you show up with all of it. So now after 2 kids and 6+ years of experience as a working mom, I would now define success as showing up in ways that are most aligned for you and ways that consider your needs as a whole person and not just an employee. Of course, if we are working for an organization or for someone else, there are key performance indicators. I hate the jargon, y'all. I really can't with it. But, there are expectations that we are agreeing to meet by being there, by being in the role and taking on the responsibilities of that role. We understand that. But even so, there are ways that you can honor your needs and tap into our powers and strengths that we've gained by becoming mothers. So there's obviously a lot of challenges that we face as mothers and as working mothers. And it's important to realize that most working moms here in the US are working within structures that were not designed for them to thrive. I think we know that, but I think it is important to say it out loud. The system at large was not designed for us. That's not to say that there aren't employers out there who are really trying to create environments that are more conducive to working parents. But in general, we moms are expected to show up at work like we don't have children and also parent like we don't have jobs. It's a recipe for burnout because it's impossible to show up both ways. I believe maternity leave is the first and one of the biggest challenges that high-achieving working moms face. I've had the privilege of speaking to a lot of moms from other countries about maternity leave, and they are horrified by what is lacking here in the US. Just so we're clear, the US does not have any national policies surrounding paid leave. There are more and more states that are adopting such policies, thankfully, but on a national level, you are guaranteed nothing as far as paid leave goes. On the national level, we do have FMLA, which provides you with 12 weeks of unpaid job protection, but there are a whole lot of stipulations surrounding that may make you ineligible for the FMLA protections. I like to believe that if we had more time to heal and acclimate to being mothers, not just mothers on leave, or had more time adding a new baby to the family with each subsequent pregnancy, that we could show up at work more whole and less in survival mode. We're just shifting our survival mode from learning to function with a new baby to having a slightly better understanding of how to function with a new baby. Oh, and now I'm going back to work and expected to show up as if I never left. When we identify as higher overachievers, we often are the ones to push through any obstacles to continue achieving. But postpartum is more than an obstacle. It's a huge transition that we need to honor much more than we already do and give ourselves the space and grace to move through that transition. Those of us who identify as high achievers do really well with a plan. Okay, I see that the next steps to achieve the goal are this. I want this. These are the steps to get there. And then we throw this maternity leave idea in there. And when we've never had a baby before, all we really understand is I need to take a leave. I need to have a baby. I need to keep that baby alive. And then I need to return from my leave. And again, if you're here in the US, if you're lucky, you're getting 12 weeks. A lot of us are getting less than that. 12 weeks is not enough time to transition into and get a grasp on how to be a mother, on how to become a parent, on how to begin to do more than survive with a new baby. So oftentimes, even if we have access to an extended maternity leave, we may not give ourselves enough maternity leave time. High achievers who are used to powering through may think that they'll be fine and ready to go back to work after a few weeks. So if that's you, You may not honor your need for rest and recovery, and then you show up back to work fighting so hard against the grain to show up every single day that you don't have a new baby at home, and like you haven't physiologically changed down to the cellular level. We do not give ourselves the space and permission to heal. Studies are now showing that it is taking women up to 2 years to fully recover from a pregnancy. So why in God's green earth do we think that we are ready to go back to work at 6 weeks? Why in God's green earth do we think that we're ready to go back to work at 12 weeks? We're not ready. And I know we don't often have the choice to choose to stay home and heal from a pregnancy, heal from a delivery, and get through that newborn fog. Another challenge for high achieving women who are becoming mothers is trying to maintain the same level of output you had prior to having children, or trying to keep up with your counterparts who are childless. If we begin to introspectively examine why we are high achievers, we may discover that we tie our worth or our value to our output or our achievements. When we can't produce at the same level as we were pre-baby, it can be really troubling. There will be times, especially in early motherhood, where you simply cannot maintain the same level of output that you had before, and that's okay. Give yourself permission to let that be okay for a season. We can and will get back to a similar level of productivity and functionality, but we cannot put that pressure on ourselves in the early days of motherhood. And it's for each subsequent child. This isn't for your first go round. This is for every time you take maternity leave and add a new baby to your family. We may also realize that we are internalizing someone else's expectations for us. Expectations that don't truly match our own. So while you are in this season where you know you may not be showing up in the same way, instead of beating yourself up, strive to recognize and honor the different ways that we can show up once we are mothers. You develop so many skills as a new mom. One example is time management. You may have been good at time management before, but you're going to be even better at it once you have that baby, especially if you are juggling daycare pickup and drop off times. A lot of us have to be out the door at a certain time for daycare pickup. So we're coming in, completing what needs to be done with efficiency so we can be out the door on time, because daycares begin to charge by the minute after a certain time, and we don't want to mess around with that. We're also so great at building in efficiencies because of that. Find ways where you don't have to touch the same thing multiple times. Can we streamline processes? Can we remove unnecessary steps, or can we automate these steps? A lot of times we find ourselves repeating a system or a procedure out of habit when the technology has evolved or the actual process itself has evolved and doesn't require all of the same minutia and same pieces. So examining your list of tasks each day and consider, are all of these actually needed, or are these just habitual pieces that I've picked up and I've carried with me? And actually, I could really use that extra 10 minutes over here each day. So let's talk for a moment about societal expectations and how we can navigate these pressures. So we internalize a lot of junk that isn't ours to hold, which can result in some hefty mom guilt. It can be hard enough to go back to work after having a baby, and then those feelings are compounded by so many people in society who feel the need to voice their opinion about working moms. How could you let someone else raise your child? Or you'll never get these years back, or you're choosing your career over your children, or any other multitude of things we hear about how mothers are doing it wrong. At the end of the day, if they're not paying your bills, they don't get a say in the matter. Some of us enjoy working. Some of us find that we are better parents when we have interests outside of the home and in addition to our children. Some of us don't want to work, but our circumstances require it. What we can do instead is focus on what value we get and provide by working. If you love your work, honor the ways in which you're adding value to the world through the work that you do. Even if you don't like your job, you can see that the work you're doing is supporting your family financially, and that is commendable. Or how you choosing to work is propelling you forward in your career path and the strides that you'll make in the long run as a result. Also, consider the positive examples you're setting for your children. There are several studies about the positive impacts of working mothers on children. Sometimes when I'm having a tough day, I'll remind myself that, yeah, this day is less than ideal, but what I'm doing matters to my family. Also, consider the positive example you're setting for your children. There are several studies about the positive impact of working mothers on children. So for example, daughters who grow up with working mothers tend to have higher salaries in their own jobs and obtain higher level, higher responsibility positions. 33% of them hold managerial or supervisory jobs, compared to 25% of daughters whose moms didn't work outside the home. Studies have also shown that working moms are also role models for their sons, helping shape more empathetic behavior and attitudes. When boys raised by working mothers enter the workforce, they tend to be more supportive of women at the office, more accepting of gender equality, and more sensitive to creating a home environment that encourages daughters to excel. And as I mentioned previously, we do need to challenge the perception that we don't work as hard or contribute as much. That's wrong. We're working harder than ever. We're carrying the load of this work plus the mental load of motherhood. And it's not your job to explain that to other people. I don't want you to take that on as your responsibility. Just continue to show up, remind yourself who the hell you are, and stand in your power, and that energetic will speak for itself. You don't have to fix the system. We also face the expectation that we'll come back to work exactly the same as before we left. While we may try to present as the same person, we're not the same. You're physiologically changed at the cellular level once you have a baby. Each additional child you add to your household has a profound impact as well. But these new versions of ourselves are still highly skilled and highly qualified. No one is taking your experience away. No one is taking your qualifications away. You still have all of that, even if you have to navigate life and work a little bit differently now. The key is giving yourself more grace than you believe you deserve and challenging all of those negative thoughts. When those thoughts pop in that you're not doing enough, that you're not showing up in the same way, that you're not achieving enough in this season, that your output is not enough in this season, pause, take a breath, ask yourself, is it true? If it's not true, release it. So another piece of the high achieving working mom puzzle is balancing the demands of your career while also being present for your family. So if you've listened to me before, you know that I preach that it is so important to take care of yourself first as a mom. A lot of people adopt the mindset, society at large adopts the mindset that mother's needs come last. And that's simply not true. It is not sustainable. I really encourage you to front load your day before your kids get up, to take some time for yourself. Again, if you've listened, you know I'm a big fan of meditation and journaling. If there's time, squeezing in a little bit of exercise, but just taking time for you before your day begins. Try to schedule in something just for you at some point during the week as well. A hobby, treating yourself, just giving yourself some time to be you and not employee, wife, and mother. It's so important to keep in tune and in touch with who we are amongst all of these roles that we play and hats that we wear. Now, I know as an overachiever, it can be hard for us to find value in this because we don't see a tangible outcome or product by doing so, but it's still so important to honor your needs first so you can show up more wholly present in the other areas of your life. while you may not see a tangible byproduct of this practice, you will feel better, you will show up better, and you will be more present and available for the people in your life. I think another really important piece to balancing it all, and I touched on this a little bit earlier, is being really intentional about your time at work and scrutinizing that to-do list. Examine your list of tasks for the day. What needs to be done versus what do I just have on my list because it's a habit or a routine that could be potentially improved to be more efficient or dropped altogether. In my experience, there were a few tasks that after examination and discussion with my leadership were deemed no longer necessary, but they had been in place since before I stepped into that role. So I'd continue to do them because that's just the way it had always been done. Are there processes that could be improved to remove extra steps? I always kept an eye out for the pieces that I had to touch more than once and then really examined why they needed my attention multiple times. Do you have a system in place that could automate some of your steps? So aside from automation, we all know, could this meeting have been an email? Really scrutinizing the meetings on your schedule. Now, if they're from leadership, oftentimes those are not going to move. But it's worth a discussion. It's worth a discussion. But examining meetings that maybe you're leading or team meetings that you're a part of, could they be shortened? Could they happen less frequently? What is really the purpose of the meeting? And does it need to be a meeting at all? Also examining your shoulds. If you are doing something because you feel like you should, why? Examine those feelings behind that. Is it because you worked really hard for this and you don't want to lose progress, or you don't want your mom title to take away from your experience or position at work? Are you people pleasing? What is the actual feeling behind the should? I realized a lot of what I was inflicting upon myself, I felt like I wasn't worthy unless I was reaching and striving for those things. I felt like I had to prove myself that I wasn't already worthy. Newsflash, you're inherently worthy. I also think it's important to have a transition period for yourself between the workday and family time. This is something that can be a little more difficult to implement if you work remotely because you have to make a conscious effort to, quote, leave work behind when it lives in your house, but do something to signal to your brain and your body that the workday is over and that the family portion of your day is actually beginning. So it does help if your work can live in a separate space and that you can, close the door or close up that space so it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. For my husband, he likes to wear shoes while he's working and then take his shoes off. Maybe you just go take a walk before you need to get your kids, something like that. Signal to your brain and to your body that this portion of your day has ended and now you're stepping into the second portion of your day with your family. And then actually being present when it comes to family time. Try to stay off your phone, try to stay off your work email. This may mean placing clear boundaries with work and that you're offline after 5:30 or whatever time your day ends. And if you find yourself going for your phone or going for your laptop, examine why. Are you just looking for a distraction? Are you avoiding some feelings? Are you having a hard time sitting with yourself? Are you having a hard time engaging with your family or your children? What is it? If you find yourself reaching for a device and not being able to be present, just examine why. No judgment. Just be curious. Why might that be? Additionally, as a mom in the workplace, and things that we have to really give ourselves permission to implement as new moms who are also high achievers, setting and keeping those clear boundaries. Boundaries with your time, boundaries with your feelings, boundaries with your energy. Give yourself permission to say no to things that are outside of your scope and outside of your responsibilities. Manage expectations of those around you. I learned the saying and repeat the saying, under-promise and over-deliver. Set the bar low when you're returning from your maternity leave or if you're in a season of transition. Set the bar low. Communicate that and then knock the bar out of the park while still honoring your needs and staying in alignment with the energy that you are able to bring to the table each day. And lastly, which I know we don't do enough as high/overachievers, is just giving ourselves all the grace. Giving ourselves the grace to be tired. Giving ourselves the grace to show up with brain fog. Giving ourselves the grace when our mind wanders off of our work and onto our baby and what they're doing at daycare that day. Give yourself the grace to operate a little more slowly for a season. Give yourself the grace to take your foot off the pedal just a bit on the career growth if that's what your sanity needs right now. This is a season. It is not forever. So from a seasoned working mom to a new or expecting working mama, here are a few things that I have found immensely helpful in the journey. One, remote work and flexible environments. Companies with more lax PTO policies and these flexible environments have been key to survival. I recognize my privilege here, and I know not all jobs lend themselves to remote work or flexible policies, but it has just made life with kids so much easier. Managing up and advocating for yourself and your needs is crucial. Don't assume every request will be met with an automatic no. You can't get a yes if you don't ask, and by you asking, you may begin to create opportunities for parents in your organization who will follow. I also think saying no when an opportunity doesn't feel right for you, or you know you don't have the bandwidth to commit to, is crucial. And again, this is for a season. You know what, boss? I don't think I can take that on in addition to my current workload in this season or in this quarter. Can we revisit in X amount of time? Can we touch base in a month? Can we revisit in 6 weeks? Keep the lines of communication open and manage those expectations while you honor your needs. As high achievers, many of us, I'm saying this with love, are people pleasers with a lack of boundaries. High achieving, getting the A's and getting positive praise and atta girls felt safe. Failure and errors did not feel safe for whatever reason. So in this season, you may have to let some people down, and that's okay. You will both survive. And lastly, I just want to share kind of a pivotal moment for me that really taught me the importance of balance in working mom life. So after I had my first daughter and I noticed that my workload was getting extra heavy and that the expectations were increasing, but the salary was not growing along with them, I looked around at the leadership in my company and realized that women in those positions were not mothers. This is not a dig at them. But from the outside and from the timestamps on their emails, it looked like they worked all hours of the day and night. And I really had to examine if continuing to grow in a company with that culture was what I wanted, when I realized that I would have the same expectations placed on me if I decided to grow in the ranks. From my perspective, they seemed stressed and unhappy, and I didn't want to sign up for any more of that than I already had. I had a decent work-life balance up until that point, but that realization made it clear to me that I needed to continue to hold my boundaries in that area. I was never going to meet their expectations because I was not them. I didn't have the same 24 hours a day that they had when they did not have children. I was living a life that they hadn't experienced and therefore could not fully understand. The culture otherwise fit the needs of my life at that time, so I stayed, although admittedly too long. So that was in 2021. And if you listened to my episode a couple weeks ago about my story, you've heard some of this. But that was in 2021. The end of that year and 2022 was a lot for my family. My dad had passed in the final days of 2021, and then I gave birth to my second daughter 18 days later. I had a maternity leave, thankfully, to welcome our new daughter and to work through some of the heaviest days of grief. And then I spent the better part of that year handling my father's estate pretty much by myself because I'm an only child. In August that year, after months of doing the best that I could to be as present as possible at work, as an employee and as the head of my department, all while having an infant and a 5-year-old at home, handling the grief of losing my father, handling his whole estate, and just life in general, my boss called me one day to see what I wanted out of my role at that company and see what else I'd be interested in taking on. I had already juggled so much for this company over the years at different points and at different roles, and for what? And now I had no bandwidth to consider any of that. And at that time, I had thanked her for her grace while I juggled everything on my plate personally. I asked if we could revisit the conversation once I tied up a few of the loose ends with my father's estate. And in return, she told me, "You don't seem like you want to work more than 40 to 45 hours. I think you want a mom, right?" I had already worked at this company for 7 years. First of all, no, I didn't want to work over 45 hours a week, standard, especially as a salaried employee who did not get paid for those extra hours. Secondly, yes, I would like to mom my 2 children. I am their only mom. If I don't do it, who's going to? Again, remember, all of the women in leadership did not have children, her included. And I'm not faulting her for that, but I could not expect her to understand the load that I was juggling in addition to showing up as a dedicated employee every single day. Looking back now, I feel that I was indeed mommy tracked. And if you listen to the other episode, you know that this led to a layoff, and that's okay. All of this to say, if you ultimately find yourself in a position where your workplace environment or your leadership and you are no longer a good fit, that's okay. Give yourself the grace and the permission to seek a new adventure. Give yourself the grace and the permission to pause and find a better fit for now. It's not forever. And if you decide that you want to take a career break, that's okay too. Really listen to what your soul and your intuition and what your body is telling you. And if a new job is the right move, if a new career path is the right move, if a sabbatical is the right move, if a pause is the right move, or if leaving the workforce for a period of time is the right move, and you can make it work within your family structure, give yourself the grace and the permission to do so. This is your life. This is your motherhood journey. And you are the best person to make those decisions for you. So to my fellow high/overachievers, I'm sending you so much love because I know that motherhood can be treacherous for those of us who are used to working a plan. And when babies come, the plan goes out the window or the plans we had don't work. I understand that and I see you. And I'm here for you. So if this is resonating with you, if you are on the cusp of a maternity leave, or if you're back in the workforce as a new working mom, or if you've been at it for a while and you're finding it to be challenging for whatever reason, I'm here for you, and I am creating resources in the background to help support you. So please keep an eye out for future announcements on tools and resources just for you, because I was you and I care so deeply for you. And I don't want you to feel like you're getting left behind by a system that was not built for you to thrive. Make sure that you follow the podcast to be the first to know about any upcoming resources and events to support you. Please also follow me on Instagram at Having a Mom Moment. It also spills over to Facebook under the same name, although I am admittedly not as active there. If you have questions about this process or you just want to talk to somebody, there's a link in the show notes to schedule a coffee chat with me. I'm open for all things motherhood. So I would love to hear from you. In case no one has told you today, you are amazing, you are loved, and I am so proud of you. Take care of yourself. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Having a Mom Moment podcast. I know how busy you are as a mom, so I appreciate you taking your precious time to join us here today. If you haven't already, please be sure to follow the podcast. And if you love what you're hearing, go ahead and give it a 5-star review so that we can spread the word to other mamas who may appreciate what we're doing over here. Give me a follow on Instagram at Having a Mom Moment, and you can check out the links in my link tree for any upcoming events or offerings that I have. In case someone has told you today, you are amazing, you are loved, and I am so proud of you. I hope you have a beautiful day. We'll see you next time.